At this time, I'd like to introduce Hank Nelson. Hank is a nuclear professional with 40 years of experience in the areas of maintenance, work management, project management, and performance improvement and recovery. Currently, he serves as the Director for Executive Projects at Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station and delivering the Nuclear Promise initiatives as the lead for the STARS Alliance. In 2010, Hank was assigned to the Institute of Nuclear Info. He served the Director of Outage Services, leading site efforts, performing outages and site projects. Hank has been in various leadership positions in maintenance and work management for several years and participated in the plant startup for all 3 units at Palo Verde. He started his career at an engineering firm and worked on the design of nuclear power plant mechanical systems. Moving on from there, Hank was a field engineer and construction manager at several nuclear plants during their construction phases. Please join me in welcoming Hank Nelson.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Rebecca, and it's a pleasure to be here. I told Rebecca a little earlier that it's going to be a tough act to follow this previous panel up here, and so I'm not sure I'll have you in stitches or anybody crying, but I'll do my best. So it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm here representing NEI, Steve Kraft from NEI. He asked me to come here for him. He had some other engagement, so I told him I'd do that. And I'm very involved with NEI on delivering the Nuclear Promise, so I told him I would love to come here and talk to y'all. So let's see if I can figure this out. There we go. So some things about NEI. They are the advocate for our industry in Washington, and there's 4 areas that they primarily are involved with. And the biggest thing really is they're our voice before Congress, before the executive branch agencies, and also they advocate for the safe and beneficial uses of our commercial technology. And they are very involved with delivering the Nuclear Promise. The chief nuclear officers and some folks from NEI, one day, I believe in 2013, they were talking about the Fukushima initiative, improving the safety of the plants. And they talked about how can we, reduce our costs and become more cost-effective in the industry and the market. So that's how the Nuclear Promise initiative got started. So one of the things that many do not recognize is nuclear energy's solid value proposition. So safe, reliable, 24/7 plus, and supporting grid stability in many areas. Provide price stability. We run when needed. So pretty much 24/7, doesn't matter whether the sun's shining or not, the wind's blowing or whatever, we've got safe, reliable power coming from our nuclear plants. Additionally, clean air. 63% of the carbon-free emissions come from the United States nuclear fleet. I don't know if you knew that or not, but contributing to diversity of our technology. We don't want to go all to one particular area. If natural gas, if we lost the nuclear plants and relied on natural gas and had some kind of an issue, that would drive prices. So, and we are a big anchor, nuclear power, commercial plants are a big anchor in the community, providing taxes and jobs, and just improving the quality of life in many ways. Capacity factor has been very good for the last 14 years in the industry. This slide really kind of focuses on the last 6 years. But interesting, in late July this year, we've had a heat wave in the Northeast, all across the actual north part of the country. And during that time, our U.S. fleet maintained a 96.6% capacity factor. And this is important. And one of the other things that, you know, the renewable power for wind generation, these wind turbines, they actually lose efficiency when the temperature gets real hot and humid. You know, as low as 4% capacity in California was reported at one time. So very good, very safe, and very reliable industry. So with that, you know, we're looking at some premature plant shutdowns. And there's several plants listed there. And, you know, some of these are for economic reasons and some of them are not. Some of them are basically political decisions. But Crystal River, San Onofre, and Kewanee, and Vermont Yankee, those plants are already shut down, as you know. Fort Calhoun, they announced in June that they were going to stop operation basically at the end of this year. And this is for economic reasons. Fitzpatrick, Entergy announced that they would stop operation there in January of 2017. Now, there's a good story about that, and I'll share that with you. Clinton and Quad Cities. So Exelon, they have lost $800 million at those two plants over the last 7 years. That's pretty tough to continue operating a business with those kind of losses. So they approached the Illinois state government and asked for them to, you know, assist them in keeping these plants running and saving these jobs. That has not been favorable in Illinois. They're looking at it as a corporate bailout, and so Entergy basically said, or Exelon basically said, hey, if you can't pass some kind of bill to help subsidize the clean power that we're producing, save these jobs, we're going to shut these plants down. We need to announce that in June. So Illinois had some actual state funding issues that they needed to discuss and work out in their legislative session, and they didn't get to this bill. They're also looking at it as a corporate bailout. And so that didn't work out. So Entergy or Exelon announced that they're going to close these two plants. So contrary to that, in the state of New York, interestingly, Governor Cuomo there worked with their commission, and they just recently, August 1st, passed a clean energy standard that includes subsidizing the three upstate New York plants, NEI and 9 Mile Point. And with that, it was announced this week that they are purchasing Fitzpatrick from Entergy for $110 million. There's some regulatory approvals required, but they're basically going to refuel Fitzpatrick plant in January and begin operating in February under Exelon ownership. So pretty impressive, very impressive what the state of New York's doing. So in the area of Diablo Canyon, you look at that's more of a policy issue as opposed to a market issue. The state of California is very interested in going to total renewables. So they are not going to renew Diablo's license past its original period of operation. It's not good news for the industry, and really kind of short-sighted on the part of California, in my opinion, that they're not recognizing the fact that Diablo could be a bridge to the renewables and the kind of mix that they want, but they're not going to continue the operation. Like the state of New York, which approved energy zero emission credits to the nuclear plants to help them bridge into bringing on more renewable power in that state. So contrasting ideas there, and also some history there about the thoughts about how Illinois is approaching this whole thing. But it's not all bad news. You know, the Fitzpatrick purchase is a good thing. We got Watts Bar Unit 2 that recently came on in June. And the safety evaluation report for a couple of new reactors for Duke Power was recently approved this week by the Commission. And and we also have the 4 AP1000s being built in Georgia and South Carolina. So it's not all bad news, but you know, we do need to understand that in order to continue, nuclear power needs to you know, be more value recognized. At the same time, we need to drive down some costs. So, thus, delivering the nuclear promise initiatives brought on to the industry. So, excuse me, there's some risks and stresses facing nuclear power. There's certain things that are beyond our control. The low-cost gas right now in the Northeast, especially, we can't control that. The improvements with the fracking industry and bringing that natural gas up has significantly reduced the price of gas. There's enough gas in Pennsylvania and Ohio to last for 500 years. So there's really not going to be any change there unless some kind of huge environmental issue is identified with the fracking industry. That you're going to see that continuing. So there's a glut in the market there, and that has reduced prices significantly, below the $2 mark in some cases. Now they are building pipelines out to the Midwest and the South to bring some of that gas down to those areas, and that would bring the cost back up again in the Northeast. But in a deregulated market, you know, with the cost of gas low, it's tough for nuclear to compete. And so that's why we're going through some of these issues. State mandates and federal subsidies for renewables, we can't control that. So in the case of when power is brought on to supply the demand, in many cases, the renewables are brought on first. And the lower power gas plants are brought on first. So in a lot of cases in these markets, the nuclear plants either aren't in the money for that day because the power demand is not out to the cost there. So these plants are at the mercy of the market in many cases. Distributed generation, you know, sometimes grid issues can affect the cost of power. So for Talon Industries right now, the Susquehanna plant, normally they would send their power south into Washington, D.C. Well, that's a very old part of the grid, and right now that's down for maintenance. So what ends up happening is where they were getting a good price for their power, they're at the mercy of the market in this case, and they're selling their power right now is going for about a third of what they're generating for because of the issues with the grid. Things we can control are our industry costs, the market structure that we have, and the policies and practices. That's part of what NEI is working for in the industry, not only recognizing the value, but looking at the market policies and practices and how we can improve. And also operational risks. Those are things we can control. So if we go through and we implement some of these initiatives, if we don't maintain safety and reliability, and we have an accident or an issue somewhere, you know, a lot of these efforts will be for nothing because we'll lose some of the trust and you know, the good record that we've had to date. So what is the nuclear promise? So when commercial nuclear power first came out, there was a promise, 3 things. It was going to be safe, reliable, and what else? Cheap. Too cheap to meter was kind of what we heard. So over the years, we have built up layers of bureaucracy and layers of training, and when there's an issue in our industry, we want to run out right away and add things to procedures, programs, work orders, training, and when you build all that up, eventually over the years, it all adds up. So right now, the average cost for a megawatt hour is $40 from the nuclear fleet. So the goal here is to reduce that by $12 to $28 with the nuclear promise. And that's going to be a tough proposition. So the reason for that aggressive goal was to make sure that we work hard to achieve it. And so far, that price was based on the 2012 market price. And so far at 2015, we're at $35. That includes capital investment, operating and maintenance, and fuel costs. So why has that gone down? Well, so a lot of plants had put one of their major capital investments behind them. The Fukushima effort, the new reactor head mods, and steam generator replacements. A lot of those things are behind us. So big cost capital projects are going down. So that's part of the reduction. But still, we need to continue, and especially on our day-to-day operations, we need to think about what are the things we can do to lower our costs. So the nuclear promise has 13 areas, and each one is led by a chief nuclear officer. And they're going to, they are right now actively identifying areas where we can improve efficiency over the fleets. And we have, in many areas, we have industry people on the steering committees that report up to each one of the chief nuclear officers. So we talked about our industry operating electricity markets with a lot of natural gas. We talked about reducing the cost of nuclear power. So the average increase over the last 12 years has been 28%. So that's tough. And when we talk about business as usual approach, will not successfully address the challenge of our rising costs. If we continue to do things the way we are right now, we're not going to change anything. So it's really up to us as individuals and as an association, NIRMA, how can we, on a day-to-day basis, reduce costs? I had a discussion earlier about that's the way we always do it, right? And so if you find yourself saying, that's the way we always do it, or this is stupid, why do we do this? Those are kind of things that are on the table here. And in many areas, you don't have to have an industry-wide program to reduce costs. At your station, you can do that. I'm sure there's some kind of way that you can work with your leaders to make sure that you're driving continuous improvement at your station. And you're looking at how you do business on a day-to-day basis. So it's really up to us, and it's great that we recognize it as an industry that we need to reduce costs. So, but really it's up to us, each day that we are in the trenches doing our work, we need to figure out how can we become more efficient and effective at the things we do on a daily basis. And of course, we want to continue to advance safety, reliability, and economic performance. That's imperative to this effort. So, delivering the nuclear promise is this industry initiative that we've taken on, and we're looking at these three specific areas that we talked about with the goal to reduce by $12 per megawatt hour. Continue to enhance the already high levels of safety and reliability. Identify opportunities to redesign the fundamental plant processes and improve efficiency and effectiveness. It's one of the big goals here. Use innovative technology to increase efficiency across the industry. So how can we bring in technology to improve the things that we do on a day-to-day basis? For records management, I've seen some ideas over here with your vendors where we can do that. And that's very important. Educate and drive awareness of the value of nuclear energy particularly economic and environmental benefits. So, when was the last time you saw a commercial on TV about how safe, reliable, and carbon-free emission your local nuclear plant has been for your state or your community? Have you ever seen anything like that? No. But we do see wind and solar power, and I've even seen some gas, commercials recently. So, so really, in reality, we should really be talking about, hey, we are reliable and we are safe. We know that. But in addition, the carbon-free emissions that we put out and we generate a lot of power carbon-free, and that's just not something that we've been out advertising. So that's one of the ideas here, that we want to drive awareness of the value of our nuclear energy. So there's 4 building blocks. Building block 1 is analysis and monitoring. So these steering committees, made up of people across the industry, are looking at what kind of things, it's like a brainstorming, what kind of things can we bring in to improve our fleet-wide operation. So they've come up with about 180 ideas. And in phase 1, we're going to work through about 70 of those ideas, and that's part of the analysis and monitoring. Value recognition, we talked about that. Value recognition is, hey, our local nuclear plants bring in a lot for the community, they bring in a lot for the state, and the fleet of plants is definitely making an environmental impact and working us towards the things that we committed to with our clean energy plan for the country, and we need to continue to operate the plants. Building block 3 is really check and adjust and bring in these ideas into efficiency bulletins and get those issued out to the plants, and I'll talk more about that later. Strategic communications, that's what we're doing right now. I'm here talking to you, educating you about delivering the nuclear promise. And it's also it's also about the Nuclear Energy Institute and getting awareness out there to the federal policymakers, the state commissions, and those folks about the value of nuclear power. So these are the teams that we have right now with CNO leads. And so we're looking at corrective action program engineering, preventive maintenance, the things that we do in the production side of the plant, security, training, transform the organization. This is an interesting one, and this is about organizational change on how we operate, how we maintain the plant, and that's going to be a big initiative. Supply chain efficiency. So this is how we work with our vendors, and they are a very important part of our industry overall, and they are deeply affected by changes in how many plants we have online, and so they're very involved. And it's important to recognize that they probably have some improvement ideas that they could bring into the plants, things on how we can be more efficient in the supply chain, and how we can become more effective working together. Oversight and assessment in processing, that's a very interesting one. And we also have a group that's looking at all these changes and how much we are saving from each one. So Randy Eddington, he was here, your keynote speaker on Sunday, and he probably talked to you a lot about the training initiative. Okay. So as I said, we have about 180 ideas right now in the mix, and we are working through 53 identified for pursuit just this year. That's a lot of change to your plan. That's a lot of things to be working on. So it's very important. It's going to change our culture. It's going to change how we do things, and we need to be open to these ideas and make sure that we're implementing them in our industry. So what kind of improvements are we looking at? So I'll give you some ideas in the area that Randy is in charge of, in training and in processing. So right now, when we have an outage, we bring in workers from across the country, and they've probably been at another nuclear plant, maybe one that you worked at. And while they were there, they went through a background screening. They took a lot of different training, like farm material exclusion, how to access scaffolds and ladders at your plant, material handling, confined space entry, fire watch, all those kinds of things. Well, those trainings and programs are the same at Monticello, Riverbend, Palo Verde, doesn't matter what plant you're at. So why do we require those folks who have just taken those trainings at one plant to come in and take them in another plant? It really doesn't make any sense, right? But we do that because we want to make sure they have our training, even though it's no different in concept than anybody else's training. So this is really called a hard hat ready. So what we're looking at is we're going to create a national database. It's NANTEL, which is currently out there. You may be familiar with that. That's going to be enhanced. And NANTEL training will house training for the industry where these contractors can take it if they work for Dan Zimmerman or some other vendor that supplies these folks, they can take it at their office, or they can take it on their computer, get access to it. So they will have these trainings and they will be able to come in, and once they've taken these trainings, they'll be good for some period of time we're looking at right now. Right now it's proposed a 3-year process where if they've been active in the industry and they've taken these trainings within the last 3 years, they're going to be good. In the case of site access training and rad worker training, it'll be the same thing. There'll be a general site access training and a general rad worker training, and it will be either a read and sign or a briefing when they get to the site about the site differences from one site to another. For the site direct people that work at the plants, what's proposed is once you've taken site access training, you don't ever have to take it again. Once and done, rather than repeat it. And I don't know about you all, but that could be a sign of stress because nobody wants to fail the test, right? So we take all that time and we prepare and we read and we so that's proposed right now. Believe it or not, one of the hurdles there is our NEI insurance company. They really have there's no regulation that requires us to take this annually, but the insurers want us to. We're working with them. Right now they're on board for a 4-year periodicity as opposed to once and done. So we'll see where that ends up. Rad worker training. So there's no real requirement. The requirement is you are required to dress out, go into a contaminated area, and come out and then undress with your protective clothing. It's a once and done thing. You don't have to do it every year, every 4 years, but again, the insurer is very interested in making sure that workers can do that. So right now what's proposed is there'll be a period, again, the 4 years for the direct workers. For the contractors, they're talking 2 years. So when a contractor is in the industry and been active, every 2 years they're going to be required to re-perform the rad worker training. And for the direct personnel at our plant, it's proposed that they do it once and done. And so we're working with the insurer to make sure that they're okay with that, and right now they're not, so we'll see. We're going to work through it. But those are the kind of things that we're working on and we're talking about. Multi-skilled employees who can address multiple aspects of the job. So we're looking at reducing handoffs. So when we maintain the plant, typically the maintenance organizations are set up with mechanics all in one area, INC technicians, instrument controls in one, electricians in one, and then you might have a civil group that builds scaffolding and does the insulation and those kind of things. Well, what's proposed is that we combine these groups into teams around different kinds of equipment, and maybe minor clearances when to go to work would be hung by these folks, and getting the work set up so that we don't have a bunch of different handoffs, pre-approved work so certain work isn't required to go through the control room to get clearance. Those kind of things are the things we're working at in that area. Rad worker self-monitoring, greater use of remote monitoring. So we're looking at, in Canada, the plants in Canada, the workers, the rad workers are also the instrument, or also the radiation technicians. They have the training for day-to-day operations in the radiologic controlled area to perform their own self-monitoring and those kind of things. So again, when you do that, you don't need as many radiation technicians to be out there monitoring the work. Flex equipment, this is the Fukushima equipment that's recently been brought on at all the plants. We're looking at using that equipment for defense in depth. So we can reduce risk during outage periods by having this backup equipment installed. So while you're removing fuel, if you have backup to your shutdown cooling, you would be able to maybe not go into yellow risk and maintain green risk during that. We recently did that at Palo Verde. So those are the kind of things and examples of the improvement opportunities that we're looking at. So these improvement opportunities, once they are discussed and become mature, they're brought in as a Nuclear Energy Institute efficiency bulletin. These bulletins are used to provide all the detail and necessary requirements to implement the improvement opportunity. So it's a value proposition, explains how the idea advances safety, reliability, and efficiency. It's also the mechanism for communicating the efficiency improvement throughout the industry. It provides the background and the summary and all of the regulation or info documents that would be the guidance to get it done. And there's also 3 colors. So a red one, a red bulletin, is already pre-approved by the chief nuclear officers in the U.S. fleet to implement. So right now, of the 70 that are out there for the next 3 years, there's 3 of them that are red. And the in-processing one is one of the red ones. There's also a standard modification design process that's coming out in the industry that is a red one. So what that would mean is, if you're at the St. Lucie plant, you're an engineer doing a plant modification, you use the same process and forms at the Palo Verde plant to do that same mod. So we won't have all these different systems and programs and processes to do a plant modification. The other red one is in the corrective action program. And in our industry, the corrective action program has gone way above what it's really required to do. And unless you have something that is adverse to quality, it really doesn't need to be in the corrective action program as far as getting that action done. So what we've created is a process where only those that are adverse to quality are really in the cap, and the rest of them are in a management action type of program at your station. So we have implemented that at Palo Verde, and many other plants have already implemented that. I'm sure you've been to some training at your station. Those are the 3 red initiatives. There's also a blue initiative, and that's a should do. You're expected to do that. There's a due date associated with it, but it's up to your CNO of how and when you want to implement it at your station. And then there's a green one, and that's one of those that's company discretion. If it fits your business process or business model, then it's a do. So I'll give you an example of a green one. At some of the stations, they're looking at eliminating handguns on the security force. And the way they've been able to do that is they brought in what they call it's considered a rifle, but it's a very small rifle. So what that does for you, it eliminates having to do handgun training with all your security force, which that's a big deal, and the purchases of handguns and those kind of things. So that is a green initiative that's actually going to be released in next month, or this month actually, August 16th. There's a CNO meeting, and that's an example of a green one. I can tell you that all the plants probably won't do that, but they may look at their security plan and take that requirement out of their security plan, so that if they ever decide to go without handguns, that's already something that they're able to do. Okay, here's the industry progress report. So currently there's 21 efficiency bulletins that are out right now. There's another 7 that are going to be approved on August 16th. And with 24 more scheduled for the end of the year. This program will run through 2018 with 70 bulletins coming out by the end of 2018, and then we're looking at institutionalizing that in the industry. So what we've accomplished so far, we have the teams led by the CNOs identifying areas for efficiency and improvements. The efficiency bulletins are being distributed throughout the plants. Like I said, we've got 21 out there, and I'll show you a slide that shows the industry is working through those systematically. And in most cases, the pace and scope of implementation will be determined by the chief nuclear officer of that particular company, which, conforming to their business needs. So at 61 sites as of about a month ago, here's what we're looking at. So there's 13, I believe the bulletin is shown right here, and the status. The green ones are the green initiatives, the blue ones are the blue initiatives, none of the red ones are issued yet. But as you can see that, not all sites are done with them yet, but we are working through a lot of them right now. And at Palo Verde, we have finished 9 of these, and we've saved $600,000 to date at Palo Verde with what we've done. So what's next? So future efficiency bulletins are going to continue to enable savings for us. There'll be, like I said, dozens issued over the next couple of years. Efficiency and effectiveness, improving those must become part of the culture of our day-to-day operations. And we must maintain safety and reliability as we go through this and look for additional ways to improve our efficiency. So what are the key takeaways today? So we won't sacrifice safety and reliability to reduce costs. Critical industry initiative. It's also got 3 strategic goals: is to maintain operational focus, increase value, and improve efficiency for our industry. And the stakeholder outreach has been very extensive. So we've had industry employees, we've had unions, the NRCs working with us. They have their own initiative, AIM 2020, that they're working through. We also, on June 21st, we had a big Delivering the Nuclear Promise meeting with several of the industry vendors, including Westinghouse and some of the major suppliers of nuclear workers for our outages, and various vendors in the industry that are very interested in what we're doing. Obviously, if the nuclear industry goes away, it's going to be a big hit for them. So we're all in this together. And it was very enlightening to see the intensity of the vendors and how much they want to be involved. So reach out to your vendors. They probably have some good ideas that can help you in your day-to-day operations, not only in selling you their products, but also, hey, maybe a suggestion that they've seen in another plant. So don't be afraid to ask them for their assistance. So the nuclear promise is achieved through efficiency and effectiveness and innovation. Again, I can't tell you how important it is for us to look at our day-to-day operations and the things that we're doing to in our business to improve. This industry's been very good to a lot of us for a long time, and it can be very good for future generations to come with, license extensions, the new AP1000s that are coming on, and other utilities looking at bringing on some new nuclear plants. But without us and looking at how we're doing things on a day-to-day basis and making sure that we're as efficient and effective as we can be while maintaining safety, bringing in new technologies that are out there every day, and just being the kind of worker that is somebody that is a doer, that's looking at things each day and not just, coming to work and going through the motions. Be a thinker and a doer and not a talker. How can we improve? So it's up to us in our industry to make sure that we continue to improve. And so when, the NRC and when different federal agencies and state agencies see that as an industry, we recognize that it's an issue and we're working together to do something about it, it's a lot easier for them to look at us as a viable industry that we need to keep operating and continue to take advantage of the values that our nuclear industry can bring to the environment, to the communities, and jobs and those kind of things. So here's time for some questions. If you have some questions for me, this is the Palo Verde site. It's an awesome site. But if you have any questions for me, yes, sir.
Okay, Hank, so I understand the NRC in Washington has been very receptive of this, but how would you rank our discussions at the regions?
I really don't know the answer to that. I know that NEI is working with the NRC. The NRC is looking at their own business, but I really don't have the answer to that. I apologize. Other questions? Yes, sir.
The $40 figure that you use, I'm trying to understand that, I guess, for maybe a second part of the question, but that's the average total generating cost across the country then?
Yes.
So how did you guys, I guess, come up with the $12 reduction then? If it's an average and you're trying to come down to $28, some will be higher, some will be lower. Are there certain companies that are performing better in terms of operating costs? Is it regionally based? Are there sand charts that you have for over time where those costs are coming from? And then those 4 building blocks, how much are you hoping to realize in cost savings attributable to each one of those blocks? And is that how you arrive at $12, or is $28 a competitive price? Is that why that's the target?
That's a good question. So the $28, the $12 decrease in the percentage, it was a 30% decrease. So there was a lot of discussion around, well, we could go 5%, or the chief nuclear officers, the way I understand it with NEI, they decided to come up with something that was going to get people's attention. So 30% is a big amount.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, so single unit stations are more at risk than a 2-unit or a 3-unit station like Palo Verde. Because the whole thing is, what's the denominator? So how much do you generate? So in the case of Fort Calhoun, they're generating less than 500. Their generation is much lower than Palo Verde. So the single unit stations are more at risk because their operating costs, depend on their output of how much they can generate. So to answer your question, they wanted a bold figure. And it's based on, like I said, the 2012 EUCD data on how much it costs. So some plants are higher than that, some are lower. $28 it may or may not be getting these plants back in the money as far as making money on their day-to-day operations, but it's a start. So And again, I said that is capital, fuel, and operations and maintenance. So when I recently had a discussion with some of the NEI folks, and so how much really of that $12 is O&M? Because that's really what affects us on a day-to-day basis, right? So what they said was, if we can, as an industry, reduce our O&M costs by $3, that will get us to the $12, because the rest of it will be worked out with the lower capital costs and fuel costs for the industry. So it's not as big of a chunk, but that's give you some idea about what we need to know now. Sir?
What type of surveys have you done into public perception of the safety of nuclear power?
From NEI's standpoint, I really don't know the answer to that question. Generally, from my understanding is people are still really worried about the fuel and the storage. I think if we had a repository for the fuel, the whole Yucca Mountain process right now is it's not on the table. If a new administration comes in, that may change. But I think that's the biggest worry. So when we talk about nuclear power being environmentally safe, the other side of the coin argument has been, well, what about the fuel?
I'm not suggesting about long-term storage. I'm talking about the safety of the facility and what the public perception is of that. Because that, I would assume, is one of the big drivers to the problems that the industry has with government agencies getting things done more quickly, which would, of course, cut down all your capital costs of the permitting process, was to say the word streamline or whatever.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that question as far as what NEI is doing on that, but...
Might I suggest that somebody go back to them?
Yeah.
And suggest they have some type of surveys like that?
Absolutely. I will take that back to them, that question back to them, and maybe I can get that answer back to Rebecca and she can get it out to you all. Any other questions?
Yeah, Hank.
Yes.
In regards to the whole process of the promise, is it foreseen that there are going to be any real substantive UFSAR changes, amendments? Because you mentioned like security, for example, that's part of the FSAR. But you're trying to stay away from any kind of amendments that are going to be subject to the NRC scrutiny again for equal to or more or better than what you have if you want to reduce some functions? That's one question. The second part of that is, if you go through that, will NEI take the lead on, like they have already, to do that at an industry level for subject areas to enable the NRC communication to be, facilitated?
Yeah, in many cases, some of these are not affecting the license, but in some cases they are. I know that NEI is working with the NRC up front and talking about these issues. As far as the security changes, they are coming up with a template to submit some of these changes so that when we do submit them in, that they're standard and they all look the same. And so the answer to your question is yes, NEI is working on some of those things to help the industry get these changes through the regulatory process where needed. Other questions? Thoughts? Yes, sir.
So when are the regulatory oversight bulletins expected to be out? Are they part of the ones coming out here in a couple weeks, or? RE009, which is a standard approach to a regulatory affairs group. So what they did was they looked at the whole industry and they came up with, the steering committee came up with, here's what a standard regulatory affairs group should be working on. And they've come up with the number of full-time equivalents that should be in a standardized regulatory affairs group. That bulletin is going to be issued on August 16th. So they're finalizing that right now. I saw a worksheet the other day from our Director of Regulatory Affairs, and he showed me the breakdown of, here's the things you should be working on, here's how many hours should be included in that type of work. So that is going to also be issued with that bulletin. The other bulletin, there's two bulletins in the regulatory area. The other one is some discussion about sharing resources in the industry on regulatory issues. I believe that one's coming out the fourth quarter of this year. So those are the two areas that I know about right now. Other questions or thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
How do you see the information technology in the picture? Because they don't seem like they have a seat at the table in a lot of the initiatives that are already being decided and such.
Yeah. That's a good question. I actually learned some things today just in touring. Steve Mattson took me through your vendor expo over there. And so, like I said, it doesn't have to be an industry initiative for you all to make a difference at your station. But as an association, you may want to adopt some principles or policies that bring in efficiency and effectiveness and using innovation. I think it can be huge. I mean, just some of the things that Steve showed me that you can do with some of the new technologies, and I think it's big. I think it's big money savings for our industry. So I think you can make a mark on it as an association, and maybe that's something you'll talk about at your next meeting. Very good question. As to why records management isn't one of the overall initiatives, maybe it's that level of understanding that the executive leaders in the organization have of what you all contribute. So maybe there's some education and knowledge transfer that you need to give them to understand exactly what you all do and offer. Other thoughts, questions? Yes, sir.
Does the industry share data of operating costs from one plant to the next plant, so I can benchmark how I'm operating on my costs? Because if I'm trying to reduce costs, and I know there's a plant out here that looks very similar to my plant here, how would I know when to reduce costs if I don't have a benchmark and a guideline?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I know the EUCD data is out there. And I can tell you that our industry shares better and has been for years on benchmarking and how we're doing things than a lot of other industries. But I would say that, it's something that maybe needs to be more, maybe we need to do more of, especially in the cost area of what a particular program might cost to that plant. It's very similar in design and makeup of one that you're working at. So that could be a challenge. I can bring that back to NEI and ask them that question as well. But I know right now the EUCD data, and I don't know a whole lot about that myself, but that's how they track the costs of the plants in different areas and how they come up with the $40 mark for the average of cost for a megawatt from a new plant.
One quick one. The transformation organization, I think Tim O'Connor, Excel, has that lead.
That's correct.
Is that strictly focused on organization, or the transformation and change management activities will have to be implemented at each site? Is there guidance on that, or is this focused just at the organization level, staffing, structure, roles and responsibility?
In talking to Tim, so they are, that team, along with INPO's involved as well. INPO actually has set up a 10-person organization carved out of their the folks that they're in Atlanta. And it's a big deal because they're actually reducing staff at INPO, but they felt this was serious enough where they put together this group. But they have actually come up with, for maintaining the plant, they've come up with a proposed organization and they've come up with how that organization would operate. And of course, that affects work management, that affects operations, that affects RP. They're talking about having component engineers in maintenance, so it's affecting engineering. So it's a huge impact. The answer to your question is these organizational efficiency bulletins are going to involve a change management program for the industry, as opposed to, now, in that change management program, it may also involve some kind of change management for the site as well, but they're not going to just leave us hanging. They're going to actually work through with the industry and put together some kind of change management package for these organizational changes.
But each site would, theoretically, each site would take that and then they'd have their own change management implementation strategy and plan for their own site.
Right.
For all the different things, innovation, technology, and all the other aspects.
That's correct. And so one of the things that we're doing in Palo Verde is we're taking a look at all of Phase 1's improvement opportunities, and we have divided those up by organization, and we're looking at organizational project plans that would include a change management plan for, let's say, engineering. So if there's 12 bulletins in the total 3-year package that are coming out in engineering, we're going to get in front of that. We're not going to wait for bulletins to show up on the doorstep and start initiating. So the idea is we're putting together teams, diverse teams, to look at these improvement opportunities overall and how they will affect Palo Verde. We're working with the STARS plants. There's 4 STARS plants: Palo Verde, Diablo Canyon, Callaway, and Wolf Creek. We are working together on these initiatives from the standpoint of project management and relying on benchmarking and looking at how these different plants are doing things, and coming up with project plans for the different areas. So in answer to your questions, we're trying to get out in front of that at our station. I would highly recommend that other stations do that. But overall, the best way to approach these things is don't wait for this to happen to us. Get in front of it, figure out how it's going to affect our culture, because quite frankly, the thing we just talked about with Tim O'Connor's group, some of these changes are big, huge cultural changes on how we implement things on a day-to-day basis. One plant's maintenance staff or production staff may be more mature than another. Obviously, it's going to take seasoned maintenance workers to be able to do this, multidisciplinary approach to work. We're probably going to have to change how we train. If you're a union organization, opposed to a non-union organization, it might be different. So each plant needs to look at this individually on how they're going to bring this in and how it's going to affect their culture, their safety, their plant reliability, and ultimately the idea is we need to maintain safety of the core, the plant, and overall ensuring that we continue to operate safely with the best nuclear culture that we have at each site. So it's huge. These efforts are huge. To think that this year alone we're going to have 50 or so bulletins come in and change how we do business on a day-to-day basis. That's a lot of work, especially when you're talking about an outage or an accreditation or an info visit or inspections by different agencies that come in and look at us. You roll all that in, you only have so many people, and then you have all these efficiency bulletins. Now, granted, they're important, but they need to be metered in effectively to make sure that we're not, doing something that's going to upset the culture or the day-to-day operations, and it's going to really be an advantage to do these things at our stations. So I would see that, INPO's a big help, NEI is a big help in us getting through this together and making sure that we're doing the right thing. Because ultimately, we've got to maintain safety. That's the most important thing here. Any other thoughts or questions? Very good. Thank you very much.